We are awakening to who we are. This is the title of this talk, and it encompasses a lot. It encompasses answers to the questions: who am I, what am I doing here, and what is this life really all about? And of course these answers we each decide for ourselves, but sometimes we look outside ourselves for clues. So this is exactly what I'm presenting here today. Take it or leave it, believe it or disbelieve it, but perhaps it's better to leave belief and disbelief at the door and just sit with it, see how it feels over time. So it's a talk that encompasses timelessness and time, and for me timelessness is represented by this light, this pure circle or sun. And throughout this talk we'll see how this represents essence. And the clock above my head, of course, represents time. So it's all in here: timelessness and time, essence and experience. And people talk about a timeless essence. You might have heard those two words together, timeless essence. There are many words to describe this timeless essence, this light, this love, this pure energy, this pure consciousness. So yes, timelessness and essence, those two go together. Also time and experience, or time and space and experience, those two go together. Because if we didn't have variations of time, and if we didn't have variations of space, there would be no grounds or no realm or no creation in which the creator could explore. So in timelessness there is just pure essence, there is no experience. And in time we have experience. The pure essence has an experience of itself. So essentially this talk states, surmises, that we are consciousness experiencing itself. Pure essence, pure consciousness having an experience of itself in order to know itself, to learn about itself, what it is and what it isn't, what it isn't and what it is, to learn about itself and to come back to itself with the knowledge of what it is. And this pure essence is not an abstract notion. This pure essence is something within each of us. It is each of us. And it desires to be experienced. It wants to be experienced. And this is what we're here for. We're here to experience our essence. We're here as divinity, seeing divinity. We're here as the creation, as an extension of the creator, creating. And people might mention co-creating with God. And God is this pure essence that we are experiencing, and we are the extension of that creation. So co-creation, yes, but there is only one creation. There is one creator, one creation, and the creator and the creation are one. And this is all there is, and this is represented by this burning ball of light, this pure essence, love. So the consciousness experiencing itself, and all these pictures you see behind me, these pictures are ways of seeing this, ways of understanding this, and this is what we're going to be talking through. It's a set of signposts back to yourself, a series of signposts back to yourself, And as such, it's like the signpost is not what it points to. What it points to is a feeling, and this feeling is directly felt within each one of us when we come to realize this essence that we are. So by watching a video you can't experience this essence. You have to do that for yourself through your own experience, through being in the flow of your own creation and embracing your power to create as this creative power of the universe unfolding. So it's a way of seeing, and it's a representation. What I'm presenting is a representation to point you back to yourself, because this reality has to be experienced. It can't be told to you. It has to be realized. I mean, truth is something which we come to. It's not something that can be given to us. But as we really search and we really want to know, we gradually chip away at the illusion or the kind of crusty edges we've built around truth. We chip, and we uncover the center, which is our center. So it's not a way of seeing which is just abstract and detached. This is a way of seeing which runs through life. It runs through everything. It runs through our experience. It runs through, or it is, the stillness. So this way of seeing it incorporates meditation, stillness, and it incorporates movement, because both exist. Both are here. We are in stillness and we are in movement. God is in stillness and God is in movement. And to deny one would be to deny the whole of it. Like, the whole of it requires that there be a journey, and that requires moving from stillness in order to come back to stillness. So we'll see how this all fits into place as we go. But basically what I'm saying is this talk is about you, it's about me, it's about consciousness and our experience. Pure consciousness and our experience of pure consciousness. And in that experience, we often step down into something that feels less than pure, into an experience which feels limited, or an experience which has restrictions. Because in order for experience to even exist, this pure energy, this pure love, this pure light, represented by this yellow ball, it needs to take on a certain amount of limitation. It needs to step down from its purity in order to have an experience of something less than pure. It needs to step down from its unity in order to have an experience through separation. Okay, so why are we even looking at this? Well, it's clear that there's a crying need in society for wholeness. Everywhere we're fragmented. We're fragmented in politics, in power relations. We have this idea of self-interest, limited self-interest, like the interest of the single body mind, when actually our self, whilst it is having an experience in this body mind, our self is much broader than the limits of our skin. Our self is something that can exist on all number of levels. And if we're only seeing part of that picture, if we're only seeing our limited kind of body-mind entity as that which we're serving, then we're missing the whole context. We're missing the whole context for our experience, which is what we need in order to empower our experience. Because if we don't know what we're here for, we don't know the broader process, we don't know what's happening. If we don't know that, then we can't know what we want and we can't know what we need. So this is why we have the power relations of the world. I mean, people trying to gain power over other people is the result of people not feeling and knowing and being in touch with their own power as a creative being, as all of it. I mean, if we realize the unity of all and we are that unity, then how would we want to get anything else? Why would we seek power over another part of that unity? It doesn't make sense. Same for environmental issues. I mean, we've seen the planet from space as one entity, and so that in a sense is one body. The universe in a sense is one body. And you go down the scale the other way. Yes, the human entity is one body, but if you look at the building blocks of that, if you look at each organ functions as one entity, and you could say that entity is a whole unto itself. But just like the human body to the world and the world to the universe, that organ, whilst being whole unto itself, is operating within the context of a broader picture. And this is what we need to realize. We need to realize that we're operating in the context of a broader picture. And that broader picture is us. That broader picture is us also, because we are all of it. And in order to know this, the fundamental question that we're exploring is, who am I? So this is the question each one of us asks ourselves if we're on any kind of any kind of journey where we really want to understand. And when I say understand, I mean stand under the truth that is us and nothing else, because there's nothing else to understand. So it really is a case of know yourself and all else follows. Because if we know ourselves, then we know what's happening. If we don't know ourselves, then we're subject to all sorts of external forces that sway us this way and that way, and our creative power as self-sovereign human beings gets sucked into something else and used in another way without us even knowing. I mean, if you step out of the driving seat of your own life, then you are driven, and as such you've surrendered your own power, your own self-sovereign authority. And that is just one of many chosen experiences, but so is embracing your power. This is a chosen experience which might well set you on your evolutionary path a lot quicker. But as we will see later, this not to neglect or reject anyway, because it's all necessary to the whole. And if we're asking this question, who am I, then personal responsibility is key. Personal responsibility to really find out, rather than make do with secondary information, rather than adopt ideas which are just somebody else's. And a self-sovereign being cannot live by someone else's ideas without losing their self-sovereignty. So this involves a lot of awareness and observation of what's going on. And really the whole thing is awareness and different levels of awareness, or consciousness and different levels of consciousness. And I'm not arguing terms here. Words represent reality, but they cannot contain it entirely. So because they're representations. So what I'm essentially saying here is that I'll just put it out there this way: this burning ball of light, this golden, orange, yellow burning ball of light, this I see as perfection, as essence, as consciousness, pure awareness, pure energy, pure love, pure light, God, divinity in its purest form. And awareness, this is pure awareness, and our experience is this pure awareness in any form, whether near purity or near impurity, whether near fullness or near nothingness. It's the whole spectrum of awareness is allowed for by this burning ball of light, and we'll see how that is so. And awareness is understood through observation. Like in meditation, often we're watching our own processes, whether it's the body and different physical sensations in the body. We're taking this kind of this other look. We're looking from another place, and this is pure consciousness observing itself, observing what form it is in. So pure consciousness observing this body is a meditation in itself, because you're stepping out of limited identification and into this heightened state of awareness which is watching itself. And this is the benefit of meditation. It's essentially connecting you to this watching consciousness, to this consciousness that is seeing itself. And it can be even more subtle than the body. It can, of course, move on to the breath, where you're just observing the inhale and the exhale, which is very much connected to the inward and outward movements that I'm going to be talking about here. And then even subtler, you can look at the mind. You can be observing your own thoughts, your own accumulated thought patterns, which you shine this light of awareness onto in order to bring any unconscious patterns to consciousness. So literally shining a light onto your own patterns of thought and thought constructions and thought identifications in order to see them and therefore dissolve them, and in dissolving them move away from that limitation that they caused and more towards that consciousness that is actually watching. Because this pure consciousness, this pure light, is God, and God is always God. Pure awareness is always pure awareness. And yet God is observing God's creation. So we have these two things happening here. We have pure awareness as pure awareness, God as God, and we have pure awareness watching a more limited expression of awareness, or the Creator watching its creation. And it's not like the Creator and the creation are ever separate, because it's all consciousness, it's all awareness, it's just different modes. And this is what we're experiencing. And in our experience we have choice as to how we want to experience this consciousness, this awareness. But our choices are limited until our awareness is expanded to accommodate the whole range of choice available to us as creative beings. So yeah, it's a journey of self-realization, And self, self can be many things. Self, with a big S, is this burning ball of light. And like I said, true self, pure essence, whatever you want to call this light, is experiencing itself through more limited versions of itself. And this is what this entire talk is about. So it's a journey of self-realization, and this is a journey of understanding the universal through the personal. Each one of us is understanding in our own way, and this is the way consciousness is going, because consciousness is experiencing itself through us. Life is experiencing itself through us. And we are life. So there's no separation, there's no disconnection of us and our true nature we were born from. It's all an expression of true nature. Through the light and the dark, it's all an expression of who we are. And who we are is pure essence, having an experience of itself through light and dark and everything in between. So a little context for where I'm coming from, just my own personal journey, which sets up an idea of how, not even an idea, sets up a bit of context for this talk. So I think as I was growing up, I had everything I needed. I had a wonderful childhood in many ways, and yet I think even from a very early age there was this feeling that there was something missing. And this is no one's fault. This is just, the way my inner self felt. Like I felt like that I was not quite touching a fullness, or not quite getting to, I know the words now, getting to the heart of things, getting to the essence of things. I wasn't quite touching that place where everything was full. It was like there must be more to life. There must be more to this, and this is something that many of us feel because until we come to this kind of understanding, there's a lot missing, and this truth has been removed from our experience over the generations, and more we're losing touch with our essence. And it's our responsibility to follow that impulse that says there must be something more, there must be something more, there must be something more to this. It's our responsibility to follow that in order to uncover that something more. And that's what happens. Seek and you shall find. If you want to know, you will know. Because that becomes your experience. And you might not know what you're searching for, but the very act of searching is setting consciousness in the direction of knowing. And we know already. We know already, but we need to search in order to come back round to the understanding that we know already. And this is exactly this process that I'm going to talk to you about today, of self feeling like there's something missing, or there's something to do, and going out into that experience, trying to finding out and then coming back to itself. So this is what we're going to talk about. This is what we are talking about. Okay, so my own personal journey, I knew who I was on physical terms, which seemed to be the terms of defining self that the world was presenting. You know, we are this physical being, beautiful physical being, and the physical is what we live in, by, for. This is it. But it's not, and we know it's not, so we keep looking, and we look at who am I beyond the physical, beyond the skin, the hair, the eyes, the bones. We look beyond the vehicle, beyond the spacesuit, beyond the spaceship of who we are. And we come to the more subtle realms, which aren't very subtle, like our likes and dislikes, like what we associate with or to, and the types of activities we enjoy, the types of food we like, places we like to visit, hobbies we have, all these things which bring us into definition, which create a sense of self. And this is a wonderful experience because we can bring ourselves into definition as we wish. And this is what I talked about before as choice. Like we can choose how to bring ourselves into definition. As aspects of pure consciousness, we are choosing how we experience this pure consciousness. And each one of us is giving this pure consciousness, this pure essence, God, an experience of itself. And all these different experiences and these variations in the world are necessary as different strands of this same consciousness, which is finding out what it is. So there's no one way, there's the path, but the path is expressed in many ways. Like there's one sun, there are many rays of the sun, there's one mountain and the many ways up to the peak. And that's exactly what we're dealing with here. But what was I saying? I was talking about understanding myself. Who am I? Look at the physical, then you look at your likes, your dislikes, the mental associations to things. And still this didn't really seem to touch it. And so I was studying things, looking into philosophy, which seemed good in some respects, but also like mental kind of knots and cycles and people removing themselves from the reality of the experience and getting caught up in this intellectual world, which was removed, disconnected from the felt essence, which in hindsight was what I was searching for. So study of philosophy and things like this, social sciences and the categories that we live by, these assumed categories that we live by, one of which is national identity, like the way we feel connection to a certain group of people, largely based on meaningless things like red post boxes and afternoon tea, meaningless symbols which we all buy into and create in ourselves a meaningful connection that some people are willing and ready to fight for without blindly knowing why they are without knowing why they are fighting, or without seeing the unity beyond the separation that creates the fight. Because if we're locked only in separation, then there's going to be conflict. There's going to be cooperation, but there's going to be conflict. And really, we're looking for the broader picture. We're looking for why that is happening. So national identity, it kind of I could see that it was a constructed, imagined community which nonetheless had meaning for people. And it's where we invest meaning that we create meaning. It's the same process. Meaning is wherever we decide that it is, because we are creative beings creating our experiences. We're magicians. We're creating our worlds, and the more you realize this, the more you understand your power. But anyway, again, I kind of move away. So the study of social sciences, philosophy, things like that, it started taking on a more spiritual perspective, partly because that's where I was finding answers, even though part of me was thinking, oh, what are you reading this stuff for? Because there's a whole load of conditioning which makes us resist that which we need. There's a whole lot of conditioning coming from outside ourselves and also within ourselves as a desire to want to fit in. There's a whole load of conditioning that means that what could potentially save us, we reject because it's different to what we've been told that we're happy with, even if it locks us into unhappiness. It's familiar, and we're often afraid to step out of that familiar. So travel also helped get me out of this familiar, because it presented other ways of doing things, other ways of functioning, other ways of life, living. It's like each culture is a version of life. And if when I was looking for what is life all about and who am I, if there are so many different versions of life, and each one is apparently neutral for the people who live in it, and yet when you see all these different cultures that are apparently neutral, it makes you think, well, they can't all be right in an ultimate sense. Yeah, of course, as a experience, they're all as they are. They're not right or wrong, they just are as they are. But in an ultimate sense of life on a fundamental level, they were expressions rather than the essence. So it was never quite getting me to the essence, and yet this search was breaking down my assumed categories, associations. I felt like I was stripping labels away, and in this process it felt like I was becoming lighter, and images of me, things that I thought were me, but started to realise on closer inspection were not me, but just things I'd stuck on top of my essence, or like concentric circles I'd drawn around myself. These things were expressions of me, valuable as such, but they were not me in essence. So this is what I like to see as images and reality. Like, there are many images, but there is one reality, and this one reality is expressed in many realities, but in many images. But an image cannot be full without the reality behind it, so it's like if we live in images without being connected to the reality that enabled them to be born, then we're only living on the surface. And the spiritual search is about penetrating the surface in order to experience the depths of who we are. So here we go. I'm going to read a little bit from this book, We Are Awakening. This is the first book, written in 2009. So here we go. As images of me slipped away, a reality greater than myself, that, paradoxically, was also myself, seeped in. Throughout my search, I had cleansed the windows of perception so much that something more had found its way into my consciousness. My thinking as it had been began to give way to new capacities that were opening up. I searched as openly as I could. I searched despite not knowing exactly what I was searching for. It was an organic process. I certainly hadn't been seeking the truth I found, but yes, in hindsight, my trail led me to what I was looking for. There was nothing else to find. This is the voice my earnest search has led to. Whilst it started with me and is from me, I'm not entirely sure how I came to know some of this, but it all fits into place, and I know it to be true. I hope that positive things can be taken from it. Let's imagine what I know to be true. Bear with me while I describe it as best I can. We came from a big golden orange yellow ball of light. Well, of course we didn't, but I have no other way to describe it to you, and this is how I see it in my mind. This spherical ball of light was perfection. It was the nothing that was, or was not, before what we call the Big Bang. It was an all-encompassing unity. Everything was contained in it, but it had not yet given birth to this everything in all its differentiated parts. It was pure being. It was unbeing. It was unbeing and it was whole. It contained everything and nothing. It can be imagined as divinity, eternity, infinity, God. Things that are generally or traditionally beyond the entirety of our comprehension. There are many words for it. It has been described as truth, joy, and love. It contains all paradox without paradox. It accommodates everything, existing or not existing, completely independently of time and space. It is a perfect glowing ball of light, pure energy. As unbeing in the sense that it didn't exist in the way we know things to exist, this pure energy was also pure consciousness. And this is represented by this yellow ball of light. So this pure energy was pure consciousness. This is because it had not yet broken apart. It had not yet differentiated itself into parts. Everything and nothing in its purest form. It was an unbeing being, ball of light. It was at peace. Be. Is. Perhaps the best way to describe it is pure love, the eternal love of the universe. So this pure essence, this burning ball of light, it was timelessness. It was the seed of all creation. It was the being or the unbeing before what we call the Big Bang. It contained everything, but it was nothing because this everything had yet to be born. So it's pure potential, it's perfection, it's God. And it's timelessness because the matrix of time and space has yet to be born. The divine matrix of time and space has yet to be born in this state. So what would this is perfection, right? It's eternity. It's beyond or outside time and space. Consciousness, energy, creative power of the universe. Pure love, pure light. Perfect. So what would it miss? What would it be missing? Well, it's a unity, it's a pure essence, it's a unity of one. And this is the oneness that we are. This is the oneness. But as oneness, it cannot know itself, it could not know its perfection. And so the one needed to split into the two in order to have an experience of itself. The one, the unity, needed to become a multiplicity, a duality or a multiplicity. A whole spectrum needed to be born in order for this oneness that was always just one. It needed a grounds for experience. So I'm going to read a little bit more about that. It desired to experience itself, this pure essence, this pure potential. So think of the power behind that. Think of the power of that. And so with this desire, the desire of the being unbeing to experience itself, the Big Bang occurred and the outward movement commenced. And this outward movement, if you look at let me just point to the right place. If you look at here, this light here is the pure essence, the pure light that is in a big picture form above it. So this timelessness, let me get the hands right. This timelessness burst out into experience here. Right, it bursts out into this experience, getting further and further away from itself. So this is the outward movement. This point was the beginning of experience as we know it. There are many ways to think about it. Essence became substance. Silence gave birth to noise. Pure consciousness was now experiencing itself. But in experiencing itself, it was no longer pure. No matter had become matter. No form had become form. Vast spectrums appeared. Things had entered the realms of tangible existence. They had differentiated, become separate. Time and space were born. And with this came a different type of consciousness, a consciousness of self, of growth and survival. This consciousness was not the pure consciousness of before, but a consciousness that knew what it was in relation and opposition to other things. It knew it was one part because it knew it was not the other parts. It went forth. It experienced itself. Duality had been born. The being unbeing became a being of relative existence. It became relative being. For the divine, this relative existence was and is the way to experience. The truth of nothing is the universe born. The nothing became the everything we have around us. This everything is many parts. The force of the initial birth produced a continual breath out. This is an expansion out into the details, into smaller and smaller parts, greater divisions, more and more branches, that has allowed for more combinations of experience. It has been happening, I guess, for a long time. This is the power of the universe unfolding. Division means separation, and this is where we are. We are in the midst of this separation, all these separate parts floating about in their experience of each other, separate and together. The animals, the trees, the people, the things, the world in all its multifaceted forms. Each part, each person can experience themselves through interaction with every other part, every other person. Rubbing up against each other, attracting and repelling. This is how we come to know each other. This is how we come to know who we are. This is wonderful. But who are we again? Up to this point, we've talked about expanding out into separation. Perhaps this can be seen as our evolution up until now. This happened because the whole, the pure ball of being unbeing light, wanted to experience itself. It has spread out across the time and space that are the product of its separation. With the force of the climactic explosion of its initial desire, it has spread out into more and more complex ways of doing things, experience. In this way, we as individuals are the parts. It's like if we're conceptualizing ourselves as these separate fragments that consciousness gave birth to, then we as individuals are the parts. If we're trying to learn about ourselves at all, the chances are we're probably doing it through immersing ourselves in the experience of the parts, through our knowledges and understandings. This can be liberating, as we have a lot of choices, but it can also be limiting. If we are only fragments of a former glory, our knowledges and understandings are limited. Sometimes it seems we don't have any choices over the forces that affect us. This is because, conceptualizing ourselves like this, external things can happen that are outside our control and beyond our comprehension. 1 minute we are elated, the next despairing, happy or unhappy, fulfilled or unfulfilled. These are opposing principles. And so this is kind of where the evolution of the world system of things has stopped. And in this, we are fragments, we are parts. But this is only half the story, because as you can see in this picture here, from this point, we start to come back in to our essence. And this is because we've gone out so far at this point in the center of the picture that we start to feel isolated. We start to feel we've built ourselves apart, which we have. We've built ourselves apart and away from our source. We start to feel that. And so we want to return to meaning. We want to come back to the qualities of love, qualities of essence, qualities of creative potential. And so we do. We come back through our search and through our investing ourselves in, more fulfilling and meaningful things. And so the pure essence at the beginning here, and the pure essence at the end. This is the same pure essence. This is this, right? This is this light. So, timelessness at the beginning, timelessness at the end, and time and space in the middle. This is like this picture, this second picture I just talked about, is like a linear representation of what's happening, of a cyclic process that's happening. A linear representation of a non-linear thing that's happening. And so we start at timelessness, we go through an experience in time and space, and we come back to timelessness. So if there's timelessness at what we call the beginning and timelessness at what we call the end, then there's only timelessness. Always, at any point, there is only timelessness, there is only essence, there is only this pure burning ball of light. This picture is all we need, because this is all there is. It contains everything and is all of it at every stage, and every one of us is it. But timeless beginning, timeless end, what has been achieved by timelessness? And the time and space experience that we think we're in now, what of that? It's like, yes, this is a real thing, it's happening. And yet it's kind of like, if we're locked only in the time space of it, we're isolated from the eternity of it, because here and now is timelessness, because timelessness is all there is. Pure essence, love, is all there is. And we are it. And yeah, so we're in this is the third diagram. The third diagram, painting, picture, has a little burning ball of light in the middle to show that wherever we are in the time-space matrix, if our minds are functioning outside of time and in that pure space of meditation or flow, creative flow, or just being who we are, then we're in the here and now, we're in the present moment. And the present moment is that one space, one time, one no space, one no time, all that is pure essence. This is us. And we can forget that because we can get locked in time, we can get locked in parts, and yet parts are a beautiful part of our experience. We are the essence. Self, this is you and me, this is us, this is all of us together. If we get lost in our experience, we forget ourselves, and in forgetting ourselves, we're nowhere. But we want to be now, here, because that's where we are, and that's where we're fulfilled, fulfilling ourselves through time and space, fulfilling our destiny which is written and which we are writing through where we are investing our consciousness. And this second picture, it kind of splits out, it goes from the essence, kind of comes out, and this is the coming out into the spectrum of light and dark, of extreme opposites, and then we embrace those opposites, we embrace the contradiction, the duality, and come back to the essence, the love that holds it all together and allows the experience to be. So good and bad, we can choose which way we want to go. These are constructed categories, and yet light and dark is a real thing. And the self, the pure essence, needs to experience all of light and all of dark in order to know itself, because this gives it the spectrum of experience. And so we are doing this as well. We are experiencing ourselves through light and dark, because we are that, we are this, and we are choosing where we want to invest ourselves. We are choosing where we want to experience ourselves. And this is the beautiful thing. We're fragments of the divine light, and the divine light hasn't experienced through fragments, but we're fragments of the divine light, and ultimately the divine light knows no fragments, because there is only this divine light. And I've run out of time, there's so much more to say, but really the timelessness and the time and space, it's all valid, it's all needed, it's all necessary. And it's a case of where's your head at, where do you want your experience to be? Do you want to have your experience in the stillness of essence? Do you want to have your experience in the movement, isolated from essence? Or do you want to have your experience in the awareness of the stillness, the awareness of the love coming into experience in the world, and fulfilling itself, knowing it's fulfilling itself through this worldly experience? It's like our evolution. We have unconscious life, we have conscious life, and then we have life aware of its own consciousness. This is what's happening. And this cross, this light in the middle of this cross, is the pure essence. It's the same thing. It's you. It's your heart center, and you're holding the worlds together. You're holding the time and space, horizontal plane, and the divine connection of heaven to earth. You're holding it within you. You're uniting the timeless and time by coming back to the consciousness of the essence that you are, and living in the awareness of that pure essence you are. So who am I? Who are we? We are divinity, the divine whole, and we are that in whole and in part. Why am I here? You desire to experience yourself, and you do each moment. You desire to know yourself as the essence we came from does, because we are not separate from that essence, from each other, from ourselves. It's all connected, which is why we love connection. And what is this life all about? Why am I here? You desire to experience yourself, to come to know your divinity and experience that. And in that is true fulfillment. And so what is this life all about? It's about this, here and now, however you express that. Love.